Hi everyone, welcome to Dear BAMf, the show for PR and marketing pros like you, hosted by Beck Bamberger of BAM. BAM is a communications agency that believes stories move the world. We move stories forward for technology-driven brands that challenge, change, and create entire industries. Today, on the Dear BAMf podcast, we're talking with Tina Rubin, Chief Marketing Officer at Wave. Tina is a consumer-centric marketing leader with nearly 20 years of experience spanning tech, entertainment, and consumer packaged goods. In recent years, her focus has been on bringing direct-to-consumer digital products to market, growth marketing, and driving digital innovation and engagement through the use of business intelligence, technology platforms, and co-marketing programs. Let's dive in.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Dear BAMf. I'm Beck Bamberger, your host. We're in season 2 here. And today, as you just heard, we have on the wonderful Tina Rubin from Wave. Tina, we're happy to have you here. Thanks for joining.
Thank you for having me.
We have juicy good questions as usual, which we'll get into in just a second. But first, do you want to give us the soundbite on what Wave is up to?
Absolutely, would love to. So Wave is a virtual entertainment company that creates live, interactive virtual concert experiences for audiences and artists around the world. Our shows, which we call Waves, are live stream concerts where we give the artist the ability to create the world they want to be in. So imagine this artist not being confined to a physical stage performance. And imagine that this artist can determine how he or she wants to show up and express themselves. All of this is done in sort of a digitized world where we use real-time gaming graphics and broadcasting technology to make it happen. To date, we've put on over 50 waves working with artists like The Weeknd, which is so major, John Legend, Lindsey Sterling, Galantis, Imogen Heap, to name a few. So we're excited. We're just getting started.
It's Ready Player One-ish. It seems like that. It kind of gives me that vibe.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah, it's super cool. I mean, imagine, taking an artist and putting them into an avatar format and dropping them into this digitized world. There's so many creative possibilities, as you can imagine, right? And the artist also has the ability to be able to express themselves in ways that aren't humanly possible in the physical form.
Yeah, that's fun. That's a different vibe too. Ooh, I'm curious to see what'll happen. So speaking of, and this new frontier that you're embarking in and are on, what would you say in the last 12 months makes you particularly proud?
So I joined Wave from Netflix about 4 months ago. So I'll speak to what my proudest accomplishment is at Wave thus far. And I would say it would be all about sort of bringing that consumer into focus in everything that we do.
Yep.
So for context, I'm the first marketing hire at Wave. And so as you can imagine, there wasn't much focus on marketing before my arrival, and there wasn't much focus specifically on the consumer. And so one of the things that I set out to do in my first 90 days on the job was to formalize a brand strategy. Obviously, as you're aware, it's so critical to everything that we do in marketing and frankly, everything we do as we operate as a business. And so that is important work such as establishing our mission, getting our point of difference down and being able to articulate that, setting our brand pillars, et cetera. And then it also is all about figuring out, okay, who do we aim to serve and why? And so I did a lot of that work with the team over the first 90 days to crystallize that thinking because we had it all. We would talk about it in meetings and with the executive team, but it was really important to lay that all down on paper. And that's critical work that now guides how we operate as a company and helps us make those strategic bets for the near and long term. And frankly, ultimately, I believe that it's my responsibility as the chief marketing officer to always represent the voice of the consumer at the table. It's not enough to create cool, innovative virtual concerts. We need to always be asking ourselves, is this something the consumer would want or like? Is there demand for it? And as we evolve our product offering and experience, what are the things that we want to make and build that are going to resonate with consumers? So that's really the voice that I believe I bring to the table now. And it's so critically important. And I'm really proud that that's kind of at the forefront of everything that we do at Wave now.
How was that? Because I know there's a lot of people who are probably like, been in your shoes before or going to be in your shoes. Was that goal of getting that messaging down pat, how was that received by the team? Were they like, oh my gosh, thank God? Or was there any hurdles to that with the team who hasn't had yet that marketing person there?
I don't think there were hurdles. It was more like, wow, Tina, thank goodness you're here. We've been needing someone like you to put this down on paper and to basically memorialize some of the thinking that they had going on. And, I obviously bring that consumer marketing experience to the table. So I'm able to kind of bring, my experience and sort of a finer point into what that looks like, right? Just to say, for example, hey, we're going after Gen Z, I don't think is specific enough in what we do. We need to understand what type of Gen Z is going to want to show up at one of our virtual concerts. What are the types of experiences that they're into, right? So putting a little bit more definition around that consumer piece, I think was really critical work that needed to be done.
Millennials, that's our target. It's like, what?
Yeah. To go deeper, you have to understand the underlying motivations for why someone would want to participate in one of our concerts, right? What is the reason why they show up? Not just what they look like, what their demo or psychographics are, but why. And what I found looking at consumer surveys and research was that a lot of consumers come to our shows not only for the artists and the music, but for the ability to be a part of a community, to be able to express themselves, form friendships, be seen and be heard, whether it's through chat or through other mechanisms. And what's beautiful about Wave is we have a lot of features and tools and resources that enable the audience to participate and really feel like they're part of the show versus just watching the show.
Which isn't as fun. Like, you're just there consuming it,
it's
not
way more
engaging
fun.
in it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Ooh, well, then maybe connected to that, what's your favorite way to look at stories or tell stories, especially in this virtual world?
What it ultimately comes down to in terms of telling a great story, at least right now, it's all about three things. For me, it's about authenticity. It's about having relevance, and it's being able to be multidimensional in the narrative that you're telling. So authenticity is something that I think is really important. And you're seeing a lot of brands do this, right? You need to be true to your voice. You need to know who you are, and you have to show up in that way. And I would say specifically for that Gen Z audience, what I've come to learn, having focused on them over the last 5 years in terms of marketing, is that they can sniff out brands who are inauthentic, who are really trying to be something that they're not, right? They're copycats, or they're jumping on the bandwagon because they can. And I think that in today's world, that level of authenticity is so important. And that having some level of humility, right? Hey, we didn't get this right. And acknowledging it and owning it actually goes a long way. And I think, when I think of great brands who are really owning their sort of authenticity, I think of a brand like Nike and what they've done over time to tell their story, to be part of the athletic community, et cetera. And I just think that they're showing up in a way that's really authentic to who they are.
Well, and their stock's doing damn well. So I think that's then correlated to, well, why do you need the messaging? What do you need to be so authentic about? It's like, well, there's some good returns. Not that that's everything, but I'm just saying the facts.
Totally.
I'm just saying the facts.
And the second piece is relevance, right? So again, there's so much media and entertainment out there that's grabbing for consumer mindshare and attention. How do you break through? I think one way to do so is really by contextualizing your narrative and framing it around bigger themes or stories that are happening in society or the world today. I think about McDonald's and how they recently partnered up with Travis Scott and J Balvin on their Happy Meals.
The best up, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's just, it's taking an age-old fast food brand and bringing it into sort of cultural relevance and making their Happy Meals more interesting, right? And more modern. And so I thought that was an interesting move. And I think that you're seeing more and more brands, especially older brands, figure out how they maintain their relevance in this sort of day and age. And then I would say the last piece is just that multi-dimension that I was mentioning, which is all around sort of that depth of storytelling. You can hook people in with different angles. So having multiple layers to how you tell a story can be very compelling. And, something that comes to mind, having worked at Netflix before Wave, is I just recently binged The Queen's Gambit. I don't know if you've watched it.
No, I'm in a crisis of content right now, Tina. There's too much content.
I know.
And there's too many things to listen, watch, and I'm behind. I'm behind. I'm in Obama's book right now. That thing's 29 hours on Audible. I'm sorry. It's
man.
amazing, but I'm like 29, sir.
Yeah. So you've got a lot on your plate. But the point that I want to make with the Queen's Gambit, because I think it's really relevant to this conversation, is I binged the show. First off, it's amazing. Everyone should watch it. But what I realized about this show was that there's so many layers and dimension to the storytelling. It's not just a story about chess, right? And you would look at the visuals of the show and be like, oh, this is about chess and that's not my thing. There's so much more layers to the show than you even realize. It's a coming of age story about a young woman. It's about relationships. It's about living life in the 1950s and 60s. And so it's top of mind for me because that show grabbed me because of the chess, because I was like, oh, that's interesting. But I stayed for it for all these other interesting themes and stories that they were telling through the show.
Oh, it's so good. Do you feel that way with content right now? Like there's just too much good stuff? It's just too much. It's amazing.
It is a lot. And being in a global pandemic right now does mean we have a little bit more time at home.
Maybe do. Mm-hmm.
But still, there's not enough hours in the day to watch all the things. So we got to make our choices.
Tina, well, we could talk a lot about this, but we got some questions we have to solve. So let's dive into this. First question here. Dear BAMf, I could use some insights here. My startup is approaching an IPO in the next, say, 2 years, which is quite exciting. I have no experience taking a startup public, though I've worked in comms at companies that were public, so I have a background in IR and quarterly reporting. My question, I've enjoyed working with our PR agency of record for nearly 2 years, but I know for certain they do not have IPO experience. I have to say, their unstoppable results have certainly gotten us to this point of the startup success. Should I be looking at agencies with IPO experience at this point, or keep the one I have, maybe supplement them? Thanks for the insights.
So it sounds like this person has a great experience with their current agency. And so I would definitely not discount that. Having worked with many PR agencies over the years, there's something to be said about having that right chemistry and dynamic. The agency probably knows them super well. They know their management team. They're intimately familiar with their comm strategy. That type of relationship doesn't develop overnight. And I wouldn't necessarily rush to get rid of them, especially since it sounds like they've been happy with their track record to date. My first thought would actually be to have an open and transparent conversation with the agency and basically say to them, hey, we've enjoyed working with you over the past couple of years. We're about to embark on this whole IPO journey, and we do question your lack of experience there. So just kind of putting it out there and saying, hey, we want to make sure you're the right agency to partner with. And frankly, if I were this comms person, I would throw it back to the agency as a challenge and say, hey, come back to us with a plan for how you would bridge the gap in your IPO experience. Maybe they can get creative. Maybe there's someone on staff at the agency that has that experience that they could tap into who may not have worked on the account previously. Maybe the agency could look to staff up or hire a few folks with this type of comms experience. And so I would suggest, hey, maybe there could be a solution inside the agency that if you gave them that challenge, they might be able to rise to the occasion. But I would also obviously explore other options. I mean, more formally, you could launch a formal RFP process, right? Where you are looking to hire a new agency with that specific IPO experience, and you could have that current agency pitch to retain the business.
Yeah.
I think, this would obviously give you a bunch of options to have at your fingertips. The downside would be that it takes a lot of time to go through that RFP process and to find a new agency and to onboard them. So you would have to weigh all of that. You could also look to supplement. I'm always a big fan of getting creative with your solutions. Working at a startup, you have to be scrappy. Maybe it's not about hiring a brand new agency, but maybe it's about hiring someone who's a comms specialist when it comes to IPOs and bringing someone in-house who can partner closely with your agency and the IR team to fill the gap. And lastly, my advice would probably be use your resources and don't be afraid to ask for help. As a startup, I'm sure they have a bunch of VCs supporting them. You could also think about talking to your VCs, right? Like they know people. They've obviously have companies in their portfolio who've gone through the IPO process. So I'm sure your VC partners could put you in touch with comms leaders, or at least the right people who have gone through the same experience, and give you some advice or maybe even some recommendations for how to move forward.
Treasure trove, Tina, of all that advice. I will say my one comment to that is like, oh God, nothing is more like stab of the heart of, oh, agency that we love. Yeah, we're going to go out for the RFP. You're just like, dun, dun, dun.
I know.
It's just like, are you serious? Like, it is a bad feeling on the agency side. So perhaps what you were mentioning earlier with, okay, can you explore what other resources they have internally, or put the burden on them? Be like, okay, guys, I'm going to have to go out with this RFP process unless you find me a solution. I don't want to do that. Find me some solutions. I'm sure they'll be able to find some solutions with that looming over their head. That's how we would approach that for sure.
Totally.
Like, we will come up with something. Trust us. Trust us.
And if it's the right agency, they'll find a way. I really do believe that when you give people the challenge and you give them the ability to kind of own that, they can come to the table with solutions. And so I wouldn't discount them.
Exactly.
Maybe you might not think they have IPO experience, but maybe they do, and you just don't know about their capabilities in full force or whatnot. So I would definitely give the agency an opportunity for sure.
Yes. Okay. Next question, Tina. Dear BAMf, I am CMO of a large venture-backed security company. I'm wondering what to do with our international expansion, as I currently have a U.S. domestic agency that handles all of our external comms with media, which has been great during the last 18 months. Now our clients are expanding to the Middle East and Europe, and I've been tasked with, but given hardly any additional budget for, this expansion from a comms perspective. The current agency really has no presence outside the States, so I can't throw more money at them. And of course, my budget isn't something like 100 or 50K a month to support an international firm like one with WPP. Thoughts on how to handle? Wow, we have quite a few questions on the, what to do with my agency situation. What would you say, Tina? I know Netflix exploded in terms of its international experience and globalization as they came out of the States, but you tell us.
Yeah, this is a tough one, especially since it sounds like the resources or the budget may not be there, right? So again, we have to get creative. My first thought, which is similar to the response of my last question, is have a conversation with the agency.
Yeah.
Talk to them about your international growth plans and what that looks like in terms of what you'll need from them over the next couple of years, and throw that challenge/concern back at them and see what they come back with. A lot of agencies that I've worked with in the past often are part of bigger media conglomerates, right?
That's true.
There could be international practice areas or a sister agency that your current agency may have a relationship with in the Middle East or Europe or wherever it is that they're looking to expand. So I would definitely explore that. I think the lack of budget is tricky because obviously they don't have the money to pay the big bucks for like international firm like WPP, or at least not in the beginning. I do think, again, you could look at hiring potentially a specialist, a regional comms specialist to help bridge that gap. And as the business scales globally, you could reassess your comms needs. And maybe at that point, you might be able to build a case to get more budget to pay for a global agency. But I think in the beginning, again, given the limited budget, you might be able to have enough money to find one or two regional specialists that can fulfill sort of the needs that you're looking for globally. One of the things that we've done at Wave, just to use a current example, and I don't know what type of security company this company is, but you could build out regional partnerships. So for example, we recently at Wave announced a strategic partnership with Tencent Music Entertainment to bring our shows to China. And one of the benefits of that strategic partnership is that Tencent is a regional player in China and has a good understanding of the media landscape there, and also has the resources and connections. So through them, we are able to extend sort of our reach and narrative by just working through them and having them sort of evangelize what we're doing and get that in front of consumers in the trade. And so that could be an interesting way for this company also to figure out, how do I tap into my partners to get some of that earned media right? If you're already working together, maybe they have access or they have the media relationships that can help you get into that market that you might not be able to do with your current US agency.
Mm-hmm. I also wonder too, with this, in this particular person's situation, that, okay, oh yeah, we're expanding internationally. Yeah, okay, great. By the way, you don't get any extra money to go do that. What is the real goal? Because money talks. I always go back to like, where does the money flow? If that's the case, then in a way, I'm wondering what's the priority of that from a comms perspective? Or is it just like, yeah, I'm just going to tell you, CMO, like, go figure that out type of thing? And I don't know how that sits with you, Tina, but that's kind of what perked my ears up on this one is like, oh, yeah, we're expanding. But you're not going to be allowed any resources necessarily to go beyond that. In other words, yeah, be scrappy, of course, and do what you can. But that is an indication perhaps that this is not yet a priority. Maybe it's just tepid. We got to see how that international expansion goes. Maybe there's just a few announcements that are pressing that could be done. Just a thought.
Yeah. There's a couple of things to unpack there. One, I'm definitely not someone who takes no for an answer easily. So even when someone says, hey, there's no budget, there's always budget. You can get creative.
That's right. That's right, Tina. Good point.
And you can build a case for it, right? Everything is about priorities. And if international expansion is a priority and we believe it's something that's going to grow the business and make it profitable or monetizable, I think you can build a case for, hey, if we invest a little bit more here, it's going to pay dividends in the long run. So first, I would say I wouldn't accept no for an answer. I would try to build a case to figure out how to get that funding if I think there's a viable solution. And then the second piece, knowing that you need to be fiscally responsible and maybe there's not a ton of budget to go around, is to think about how do we test and learn, right? How do we say, okay, let's set a couple of milestones. And as we hit those milestones, maybe that is what unlocks additional funding or support, right? Because I get it. Like,
there you go. People
don't want to spend money if they don't see success metrics or KPIs. And so maybe it's just about changing that narrative and saying, hey, we get it. International expansion is important, but the money is going to come, or maybe it's not going to come right away. So how do we kind of figure out what those milestones are to help us unlock more funding or unlock more support and resources, essentially? So I would look at it that way as well.
I love the idea of what are the markers in which we can then execute more budget, more people, more resources, or whatever. That should be negotiated up front too. So we're all clear. I like that. Okay, last question then for today. Dear BAMf, my CEO is obsessed with the next social media platform. We have a lot of millennial and Gen Z users, so I get this. I'm planning our 2021 marketing spends, and I'm curious to hear what the podcast is watching or listening to in terms of the next platform. Or perhaps better, where should we stay? I ditched Facebook 2 years ago and haven't looked back, for instance. Tina, this is right up your alley.
Oh my goodness. I love this question so much. And my answer is TikTok. That to me is the platform to watch. That to me is where the Gen Z audience is today. That's not to say they're not on Instagram or Snap, but TikTok I've been super obsessed with, and I've been keeping an eye on this platform, I would say, for the last 6 months to a year. It's short form video, as you know, but the content is so creative. And I've gotten to spend a lot more time on that platform, not only professionally because it's a place where I need to understand to be able to market to Gen Z, but I also love it personally. And it's something I do with my daughter because she loves it. TikTok is like become part of culture and the zeitgeist. It's kind of hard not to be on it, frankly. And what you're seeing play out in my mind and having been sort of marketing to the younger demographic for quite some time now is, you know, we had MySpace and then it went to Facebook and then it went to Instagram and Snap. And now TikTok is all the rage. And I think that is the platform that marketers, especially those who are marketing to a younger consumer base, need to be focusing their attention on. I think the algorithm is amazing. And what I love about TikTok is that it shows you more content based on what you like and engage with. So discoverability doesn't just come from who you follow. So some of the other platforms, you only see the content based off of the people you follow. Whereas TikTok, like for example, I'm going to use myself. I love dog content, cooking. I know. I'm so that person.
But then that's what you get teed up.
Exactly. And so I go into sort of my own black hole of all that stuff. And I love it because that's the stuff that I show up for. And when you go into the app, they don't show you your friends feed. They show you what they call the For You section, which basically is curated based off of what you've liked and engaged with in the past. I think what's interesting about TikTok, and frankly, this is something that I'm tackling with my team today, is it's a new platform. And so the ad products are pretty new from an advertising perspective. And a lot of us marketers honestly have to take sort of a test and learn approach to the platform. Everything feels very experimental right now, especially because the platform is still, pretty new. The ad products have just recently been launched. So for me, the way I look at TikTok is, yes, we need to be there both organically and through paid means, but figuring out what that right mix is and how to show up in the most effective way is still something that we're trying to figure out and learn into.
It's like the new frontier. And there's always something, of course, but second plus one for your mention of that. It seems they've dodged a bit of the who's going to buy them at some level, Trump stuff or something. I don't know. Maybe that's going to change. But in other words, it seems like it's going to stick. It's going to be around. And it's only growing more and more. In fact, a lot of people that use it have been staunch advocates protecting it and advocating for it. It's been interesting to see the advocacy from a user base of the product, which you've never seen. Never seen with Facebook, for example, right? Have you seen that, Tina? Like no one's like, oh, wait a second. Facebook's my life. Like, no, you can't take this down. TikTokers have been obsessed in the advocacy of this. It's almost been maybe one of their best growth engine tools this year, interestingly enough. That's just my speculation. It's kind of cool, though.
I fully agree, Beck. There's something about the content. It's happy. I get joy from it.
Yes.
I don't mind spending time scrolling through and watching these amazing videos. And so I think there's something to be said about just like, it's entertainment. I don't find Facebook to be entertaining now. Maybe it once was, but I think it's changed so much over the last couple of years that I just don't get that sense of joy that I once had for it.
Yes, agreed. Oh, Tina, this has been so fun with you. We are done with the questions, at least for today, at least for this session. And this has been great. I so appreciate you hopping on here.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Dear BAMf, the advice podcast for PR and marketing pros like you. Our show was created by BAM, a PR and marketing agency headquartered in San Diego and New York City. The music you're enjoying today was composed by Tiffany Dizon, produced by Daniel Kessner, and played by San Diego Symphony's Art of Alon. If you have a tough PR and marketing question you'd like us to answer, write to us at bamtheagency.com/Dear BAMf. Don't forget the F. If you'd like to get notified of our latest episodes, subscribe to us wherever you listen to podcasts and review us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.